And we welcome to the program this afternoon Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. Senator, you got some sleep last night, I trust.
Well, I did, but, I was thinking of you when I was in the middle of this 13 hours. I got about 5 hours into it, and it's like, well, Rush does 4 hours of this every day. Certainly I can do 4 more hours.
I was going to... That's awfully nice of you to say, but I doubt that I was in your thoughts last night, although I appreciate the comment. When did you decide, Senator, that you wanted to make this a filibuster? Did it just happen spontaneously, or did you have a plan for it?
We've been talking for a week about how important the issue is, that it's a constitutional issue and has more to do with the Constitution than it does to do with individuals. But we didn't decide on doing it really till I walked in that morning. I was walking into the Capitol and unfortunately didn't have very good shoes on it for it either. My shoes were hurting me the whole damn time. But we walked in, and you have to look for an opportunity when the floor is open. The Democrats control the floor, and most of the time they tie it up where you're not allowed to filibuster. And the floor became open, and it was either today or Wednesday or Thursday, and we decided the opportunity was there, and we went for it. But we had prepared for it in the sense that I'd been going over articles about drones and the discussion for a couple weeks.
Well, the American people recently, in modern era, hear about a filibuster, and to them, it just means everything's on hold till somebody comes up with 60 votes. You actually had, people were marveling last night, we actually had a speaking or a talking filibuster, and you had some help from people on your side. You even had some Democrats join you. I'll tell you what, you probably know this, but the people of this country, and I think it's a majority of people, Senator, are very frustrated at how we're being governed by a minority. We're the majority of thinking in this country. People that filibustering on the topic you were filibustering on last night, the idea of a smaller government, the government's simply out of control, too big, too much in debt. That is a majority viewpoint, but nobody in the Republican Party has dared take this president on. You did last night, and you're alive today to talk about it, and nobody's calling you names, and you are, in certain ways, a hero to a lot of people today. And I hope this kind of thing continues. I hope the reaction you've gotten, I know you're getting some criticism, we'll ask you about in a minute, but this was, to me, a seminal event last night that could change the direction that we are all heading, particularly in terms of educating and informing the American people about what actually is happening in their country.
Well, we ask a pretty important question, and that's whether you get to pick and choose which parts of the Bill of Rights apply to American citizens. And, the Fifth Amendment says you get a right to a trial, you get a right to due process, and we don't think the president or any politician, Republican or Democrat, should get to choose when the Fifth Amendment applies. We also just weren't satisfied with him when he says, well, I intend to not do this. I don't intend to kill Americans. The problem is it's sort of like indefinite detention. We can now detain American citizens without trial, and he says, well, I don't intend to. Well, his oath of office says, I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. It doesn't say I intend to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. So we want stronger language. We want him to admit we're still talking to the White House today, and we're not going to let the nomination go forward in any expeditious fashion unless he will answer the question directly.
Well, that's a good point. Your filibuster ostensibly was to protest the nomination of John Brennan as the CIA director, but it's taken on a much larger universe of ideas now. It's become bigger than just the Brennan nomination. Now, imagine a lot of people who came to this whole debate late, who hear that the subject being discussed is whether or not the president will promise not to kill American people sitting at a cafe who are not engaging in any provocative behavior. A lot of people are saying, come on, there's no president that would ever do that. What are we talking about here? So why are you concerned? Do you actually, you need this in writing from the president to be assured that this is something he wouldn't do?
Well, here's the question. It seems so absurd and so bizarre, and so it should be a really easy question to answer. But the reason we ask the question is we currently do drone strikes overseas, and I'm all for them when people are shooting at American soldiers. I think they're a great tool. I think it's a great weapon we should use to defend American soldiers and American lives. But we are also killing a lot of people who aren't actively involved. Now, they may be bad people. They may have been involved yesterday or going to be tomorrow, but we kill them at home asleep in restaurants, cafes, etc. Now, that standard may be okay overseas. I think it's debatable, but at home that standard's not good enough. So if you're in a cafe and you've been emailing your cousin who lives in the Middle East, and people here in Congress say, oh, well, you're an enemy combatant. Well, I think you can be accused then of being associated with a terrorist if that person in the Middle East is a terrorist, but you need to be arrested and you need to have a chance to defend yourself. If you have a grenade launcher, though, you don't get due process. So if you're attacking America inside or out, American or otherwise, you don't get a lawyer or due process if you're setting up a bomb. But you do if you're in a cafe eating with somebody, you're sending an email to someone. It needs to be clear that if you're non-combatant, if you're not engaged in combat, that you get your day in court. The problem is the president came forward with this document that he leaked, this drone document, and he said in it that an imminent threat doesn't have to be an immediate threat. And then there are these pictures of people being killed around the world who are not engaged in combat, and I just don't think that standard can be used here at home.
Senator Cruz yesterday, in hearings at his committee with the Attorney General, eventually pried from the Attorney General that such behavior as you just described by the government would indeed be unconstitutional. It took him, it was like pulling teeth without Novocaine, but he finally got that done. Now, that was earlier in the day. Why wasn't that enough for you to end your filibuster?
Well, we got that news a couple hours into it. I talked to Senator Cruz, but it was hard to have conversations because I had to keep talking the whole time. But we did get a transcript of it, and we read through it. And I described it later on in the debate as withering cross-examination by Senator Cruz. And that's basically what it was. He did not want to answer the question, and I think it was under duress, and the word constitutional never occurs in any of his answers. So all we want is a short paragraph. I think they're coming towards us. We want them to answer something that every American believes, that you cannot target an American on American soil and kill them without first charging, arresting, or convicting them in a court of law. I think every American believes that, left and right. But some who are so fearful say, oh, America's the battlefield and this is law of war over here. But law of war means you don't get due process. And I'm not against that. In the middle of a war and you're shooting at someone, you don't get a lawyer, you don't get due process. But in America, eating in a restaurant, you get arrested and you get due process. Well, and that is a really important distinction, and we need to have that debate because there are some up here arguing. In fact, the Wall Street Journal today argues that if you're declared an enemy combatant, you can be killed. The problem is who gets to decide when you're an enemy combatant and when you're not.
The president does. He's got the kill list.
That's a real problem for me.
He's bragging about it, Senator. He's bragging. They're trying to build up his tough pro-military credentials by he's got the kill list. He picks the names.
Well, the Bureau of Justice has come forward with some criterion for people you need to report on if you know these people. These are people with missing fingers, stains on their clothes, people who like to pay in cash, people who have weatherized ammunition, and more than 7 days of food. These are people who are potential terrorists, and if that's the list, I know a lot of people on that list. I'm a little concerned that they ought to get a trial before they get a drone strike ordered.
I'm on that list. I am. Yeah, but, you raise an interesting point. It's 2013. There are a lot of people today who literally can't believe, that the highest law enforcement officials in the country will not, with ease, assure the American people that they will not be randomly targeted by a drone while they're minding their own business and not threatening anybody. This doesn't even seem to most people to be something that should take 5 seconds to answer.
And the real debate is bigger than President Obama or any president. It's bigger than Republican or Democrat. It's about what Madison said in the Federalist Papers. He said basically that you can't, if you had a government of angels, we wouldn't have to worry about having rules. But we don't always have a government of angels, and that's why we have the rule of law to prevent the time when a democracy can make a mistake and elect a bad person, an evil person to office. So this is not always about the here and now. It's about protecting people in the future from bad government.